Nechako Watershed is all the area of water because water always flows downhill and it takes the easiest route. So all the water from the entire area that flows into the Nechako River from all the streams, the creeks, the streams, the lakes, and other little small rivers, all into the Nechako River. So it's vast. It's very big. And these huge fish have had a huge territory, and they've been here a very long time. And, you know, for us to mess it up in the last 50 years is a real shame, and it's our job to fix it.
The Nechako Watershed is about 290 kilometers long.
Sturgeon live in the Nechako River.
Sturgeons live in lakes and rivers.
There are approximately 650 sturgeon in the Nechako River.
The Nechako River drains into the Fraser River.
The function of the hatchery is where they spawn, hatch, and rear sturgeon, and then release them into the river. It's necessary to do this to make sure younger age classes enter the water system.
It's one of the challenges that we have with hydroelectricity dams or dams like that is we don't have what would be called a natural flood. So we've eliminated that and controlled that with using the dam as that tool. That has caused us to not have the sediments washed out and flushed out of the spawning beds that are there. And so our spawning beds might look closer to what pavement looks like. It's smooth. We understand that sturgeon are broadcast spawners, and so they throw their eggs out, and those eggs are looking to grasp onto something that's below the water surface, some structure, some rocks, some gravel, some trees.
Because sediment will be deposited continuously, we need to clean the sediment and the gravel continuously. So we're working on finding out how often we need to do this to improve the habitat for the sturgeon to spawn. So adult sturgeon come to Vanderhoof area and to that spawning site in Vanderhoof that you've learned so much about already around May and June, and spawning happens in about that time period. After that, the sturgeon move back to the different habitats they dwell in throughout the year.
Yeah, knowing that there is only one spawning area close to Vanderhoof, that places the population at a bit of a risk in regards to not having other places to support the population. So in saying that, if there's any type of destruction or decline in the availability of the habitat in that one location, the sturgeon may not persist and eventually become extirpated from that area, which means no longer there, but still elsewhere.
Eggs get fertilized by the male swimming up to the female. The female then releases the eggs, and then the male releases the milk that fertilizes the eggs.
Yeah, from what biologists can tell, the main food sources for juvenile sturgeon in the early stages of life, they'll be feeding on invertebrates, aquatic invertebrates and larvae. They'll also feed on things like clams and snails and anything else in the benthic environment, which is the riverbed within the Nechako River. As they move to adulthood, adult sturgeon typically feed mostly on fish, and salmon being one of the main food sources for adult sturgeon, as well as other species of fish in the river. And some think that adult sturgeon will even eat small sturgeon.
To talk a little bit more about sturgeon actually get to their food, they have to dig through the mud, literally. They use these little barbels that you may have seen at the bottom of their mouth and their head to detect critters that are hiding in the sediment. And then they move to those spots and basically suction up and vacuum up with their mouths the mud, and then extract the invertebrates and mussels from that mud, and then they push the mud out through their gills and through their mouths again, and that's how they access their food.
Nechako White Sturgeon are found throughout the watershed. They're found all over the Nechako River, going up to Fraser Lake. And there have even been reports of sturgeon south of Burns Lake. There's been sturgeon that go up through the Stewart River into Stewart Lake. They travel into Takla Lake through Trembler Lake. So they're really found in a wide area.
So while the Nechako White Sturgeon are unique in terms of their spawning grounds to the Nechako, so they're born and raised in the Nechako, they do move around, and we know that they're in the lakes and the adjacent tributaries, Takla Lake, Stewart Lake, and so forth. We also know that they come down here to Prince George, right along the river that we're at right now. And even beyond that. So to talk a little bit about movements downstream of Prince George, we know that adults utilize the Fraser River, the upper Fraser up towards McBride, and also further downstream towards Cottonwood Canyon. We know that adults move into that habitat outside of the Nechako. We have recently learned also that some of the juveniles that we've released from the hatchery have made movements downstream out of the Nechako into the Fraser.